is Wadjet, this snake. So the snake, Wadjet, is the babysitter of baby Horus. And Isis goes off to look for the body of Osiris. But she can't just walk around with all these humans because they won't tell her the truth. They'll think she's a goddess, and they'll be like, oh yes, whatever you say, Isis, you are right, you are correct. She won't be able to get any good information about where this magic box is. So she disguises herself as an old beggar woman. And she bends over, she's wearing old raggedy clothes and stuff, and she goes from town to town along the Nile saying, you know, did you see a box go by maybe 9 months ago, 8 months ago? It was a long time ago. Did you see a box? And people are like, I don't know. What are you talking about, old lady? And they're kind of rude to her. So Thoth, who really likes Isis, he finds out she's going around disguised as an old beggar lady. And he says, Isis, someone's going to kill you if you're not careful. People do not like old beggar ladies. I'm going to give you some protectors. I'm going to give you 7 magic scorpions that will follow you wherever you go. So she walks around and she's got 7 magic scorpions behind her. And she comes to this town and she's asking everybody in the town, have you seen it? Have you seen a box? It's a very beautiful box. And people are like, don't bother me, old lady, I'm too busy. So she goes up, she thinks maybe the waves of the Nile have washed it up the hill. So she goes up a hill where there's a beautiful house on the hill. She knocks on the door of the house, and the woman of the house opens the door, and she's a wealthy woman, and she says, hello? And Isis says, have you seen a box? It may have come up on the shores here. I'm looking for this beautiful box. And the lady says, beggar woman, get off of my steps. You're dirty. You're messing up my steps. Go away. Shoo, shoo, shoo. And slams the door in her face. And the scorpions are mad. They're like, how dare you treat Isis this way? So Isis goes along. She doesn't notice that the scorpions have stayed behind. The 7 scorpions go into the lady's house and look for something, some dastardly work to do. And they find the lady's baby. And they take all the poison in their tails and they combine it in one scorpion's tail, and that scorpion goes boom and kills the baby. Yay! Well, meanwhile, Isis is down on the banks of the Nile, and she has been talking to this poor fisher girl. She makes her living catching fish. And instead of the fisher girl going, oh, pew, get out of my way, old lady, the fisher girl says, please, sit down. I have not seen that box, but you look very tired and you seem like you're hungry. I don't have much to share, but I'm happy to give you half of what I have. Please sit with me. Let me take take your weight off your feet and enjoy yourself. And Isis is really grateful when suddenly she hears this screaming woman up on the hill crying, my baby, the scorpions have killed my baby. And so she's like, scorpions. So she says to the fisher girl, excuse me just 1 minute, I have to go do something. So she goes up to the hill and she's like, scorpions, what did you do? And the scorpions are like, we killed that baby. And she says, shame on you, scorpions. That baby did not do anything to me. How could you kill a defenseless baby? Bad scorpions. And then she goes into the baby, and she's Isis, so she goes bing, bang, boom, and she brings her back to life. And the witch lady is like, whoa, what's going on here? And Isis says, I am Isis. You made a big mistake when you kicked me off of your front porch, lady. Never assume that because someone looks poor and old, they are. And the witch lady's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Isis, whatever can I do? However can I make it up to you? And Isis says, here's your punishment. For the rest of your life, you will trade places with that fisher girl down by the water who is so kind to me. You will go down and you will make your living fishing, and she will come up here and live in your great house. I hope you learned your lesson. So Isis goes on, and everywhere she goes along the path of the Nile, she sees children, and the children help her because the children are playing in the banks of the water, in the water in the Nile, and they see things like cool boxes. And they're like, yeah, we saw that box. It was that, that way. And so Isis puts a blessing on children because of this. She really loves children. Here's the blessing she puts on all of your heads and all children. She says, children will always tell the truth. That's my blessing.
I don't know.
So, maybe you're too old to still have this blessing on your heads, but when you were little, probably like my children, you found it hard not to tell the truth, even when it was kind of embarrassing. Like, for instance, I remember when my kids were really little, I would be walking in the grocery store with them, like sitting in the cart. Do you remember doing that? Sit in the car while your mom or your dad or your grandmother pushes you through the grocery store. And I remember once being in line at the grocery store and my daughter sitting there in this cart looking over at the line next to ours where there was a kind of a large man there, right? And I can remember my daughter going, Mommy, look, it's a fat man. It's so embarrassing, right? As a grown-up, you're like, shh, be quiet, that's so rude. You can't say that. Be nice, don't say that. But Isis would say, she can't help it. She tells the truth. She'd be like, sorry, fat man. Maybe you need to go on a diet, right? So that was what the Egyptians said when little kids told the truth at embarrassing times. I bet you guys have all done something like that in your lives. Yeah, calm down. So Isis would say it's because of the blessing she put on these children. So she kept going down the river, trying to find this box, and finally she went all the way out of Egypt and to this place called Byblos. And this, in fact, was where the box had landed. It had been washed up out of the shores of the Mediterranean, because the Nile goes all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. The box had gone into the sea and then washed up in a big wave and landed in the branches of a tree in Byblos. And the tree took this box and surrounded it, because it's magic, right? The tree was just like, and swallowed it up, and then became the most incredible tree in the whole country. It got all these blossoms on it that had never been there before, and they smelled fantastic, and people came from miles around to smell that tree, because it was so amazing. And the king of Byblos said, I must have that tree in my palace. Chop it down and bring it into my palace, and we'll use it as a pillar in one of my great halls in my palace. So the tree got chopped down and taken to the king of Byblos. Well, meanwhile, Isis makes her way finally to Byblos. She's disguised as an old beggar woman, and she's walking along the banks of the river nearby Byblos, and there's all these servant ladies down by the banks of the river washing clothes and washing their hair, taking a bath, that sort of thing. And she's asking them, did you see a box? It was a magic box. And they say, you know, there's a story about a magic box landing in this tree. I wonder if that could be it. And she said, oh, tell me more. And so they tell her all about it, and as she's talking to them, she braids their hair. No one here has braids today. Wow, that's unusual. Usually there's somebody with braids. She braids their hair. You guys all know what braids are?
Yeah.
So they say that Isis invented braids, and that they've never been done before. Braids never... Rose is braiding her hair right now. So the servants come back up to the palace. Okay, stop, Rose.
Rose, you're distracting.
The servants come back up into the palace with their hair braided, big braids, like Rose's little braid. And the queen goes, oh, I love what you've done to your hair. It's so fabulous. And you smell so good. Because, of course, Isis has just been, stroking their hair. And the smell of the goddess is fantastic. So she says, tell me, however did you get your hair to look like that and how to smell like that? And they say, well, there's this old lady down by the water. And she said, bring her to me immediately. So the servants go down and bring Isis up into the palace. And the queen interviews her. Like, oh, who are you, and what are you doing, and how did you learn? Please, braid my hair while you're talking to me. And so Isis braids her hair, and she talks to her for a while, and the queen says, you are so fantastic. I have been needing a nanny for my child for a very long time. I wish you would come